I'd like to welcome you to another monthly program of the Rhinebeck Historical Society. It's a magnificent day today in the middle of May, and in a moment we're going to be standing in the middle of Astor Drive, next to the Baptist Church and across from Northern Dutchess Hospital. You're going to learn in today's program that Rhinebeck is very fortunate that two families who could have lived anywhere else chose instead to make their home right here in Rhinebeck. The two families I'm referring to are the Astors and the Verillis. Today's program is about a pair of gates and about the exceptional generosity of two families that had some connection to those gates. So I'm glad you've decided to join us, and let's get on with the program. My name's Mike Frazier. I'm the village historian today, and I'm delighted to see so many of you able to be here. The Astor family, whose gates these once were, those folks made a lot of money and never missed an opportunity to make more. Whether it was smuggling opium into China or buying every last corner of real estate that was on the market or even not on the market in New York City, they knew how to make a buck. And actually the surprising thing is that when the last of the Astors left town, Brooke Russell Astor, that she didn't take these gates down, and instead of putting them in a barn on River Road, that she didn't have them melted down and collect the few coins that iron would have brought in those days. No, thank God she didn't do that. And the truth is that despite some ethical lapses, the Astor family was exceptionally generous. There's hardly a charity in the town of Rhinebeck that did not benefit in some way from their wealth during the time that they lived here and even after they had left here. There's a Ferncliff forest down the road that was donated to the Rhinebeck Rotary Club, and Nick Staley is currently the official ranger, Ferncliff Forest. It's a nonprofit organization, quite a bit of land. If you follow this road down to the other end, there is a nursing home and rehabilitation center that was donated to the Catholic Church that still does what it intended to do when it was donated by the Astors. And there are many other examples that I could give you. We're here today not so much to talk about a couple pieces of iron that are being restored to their original spot, but really to talk about the importance of history. And that's really the only reason that these are here, that the Village of Rhinebeck trustees, and thank you Mayor Bassett and thank you to your colleagues on the Board of Trustees, who took the step of actually accepting these gates on behalf of the village. It's because there's a lot of history in this community, and we need to remember that history. We need to be reminded of it from time to time, and we hope that these gates will do that. So at this point, to talk a little bit about the history of this road behind me and the estate behind me and the people who live there and these gates, I'd like to introduce the son of Dr. George Riley, who some of you may know because he was the mom doctor sitting there next to the catch basin side for many young people who may be today not so young in this community. And and Matt is also the son of Kay Riley. Kay has passed away, but there was nobody more committed to what these gates represent than Kay. She was a member of the board of the Whitman Resource Center, of the Museum of Rhinebeck History, of the Rhinebeck Historical Society, and the list goes on and on. You know, there's a wonderful book about the history of Rhinebeck written by Sari Teachin, and it was Kay Riley that spent a lot of time with Sari reviewing the photos in that book, reviewing a lot of the text, making sure it was accurate. And if there was a comma out of place, when I spent time reviewing my texts that might go into the museum newsletter with Kay, it was Kay who would tell me, no, that ought to be a period and you ought to start. So to the memory of Kay, and thank you, George, it's not only Matt who's here today, but these gates are really a tribute also to the work done by Stuart. Where are you, Stuart? Hiding here somewhere. All the work that he and his colleagues have done to sandblast, paint, restore these gates, and to have taken care of them from the date that they came down in the 1950s until they came back here less than 24 hours ago. So, Matt, if you would step forward and share a few comments with us.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming out. Lovely day. As Mike said, I'd like to talk a little bit about the history of the Astors and these gates and this road, because I think it's important for us to remember the history that's around us. Every day we drive over these streets and don't think about the history that is underneath our wheels or in our feet as we walk around. So we hope that these gates will help serve as a reminder of that history. And I would like to just sort of give a little background of the history so that, at least for those gathered here, maybe some of these little tidbits of history will stick in your mind every time you walk or drive by and see these gates. The Astor family first came to our community when William Backhouse Astor married a Livingston and bought his father-in-law's place, which was called Rokeby. And from there, the Astor presence sort of spread southward along the river. To his daughter, he gave land that became Steen Villacha, just north of the bridge approach on River Road. And his son, William Backhouse Astor Jr., in the 1850s bought some farmland from the Garretson family, which became his country seat, which he called Ferncliff. Or I should say they called Ferncliff because he was married to Lena Astor, who was the famous leader, or infamous if you prefer, leader of the New York Society and the keeper of the 400 who were allowed in to her famous balls in her ballroom in her New York mansion. So they bought Ferncliff, or they bought a portion of land, and it just gradually grew from there to an estate of about 800 acres, when William Astor died, and his son John Jacob IV inherited Ferncliff and the rest of the Astor fortune. Now, John Jacob Astor was a unique individual. He was an inventor and fascinated with all things electrical, which one of his other great passions was good roads, which was a thing in the late 1890s as well because of the bicycle fad that had gripped the country. Bicycles, the standard bicycle had been developed, which made the bicycle a little easier to ride than those crazy penny farthing things. So everyone was buying bicycles, including John Jacob Astor and his wife, who was quite an athlete, from what I understand, and enjoyed riding a bicycle also. So I think from that, John Jacob Astor got passionate about improving roads, and he took that on wholeheartedly here at Ferncliff. And his first major road construction project was this road right here, which for them was a shortcut to the village from the Ferncliff estate. The road was built in 1895, and the Astors actually did not call this Astor Drive. They called it the F&R Road, which was part of a nomenclature that they used for all their roads on the estate, using the letter of the beginning point of the two termini of the road, the beginning and end, F being Ferncliff and R being Rhinebeck in this case. Rhinebeck, excuse me. The road originally ended at the former Lorillard house, which was the Verrilli family home for over 50 years, I guess, and became the residence of the superintendent of Ferncliff estate, and is also where they had a carriage house and later John Jacob Astor's automobile garage. In about 1895, John Jacob Astor hired Herbert Pinkham, who was a very skilled civil engineer, to be his superintendent for the Ferncliff estate. And my suspicion is that he hired him in particular because he planned extensive road work and other construction, and Herbert Pinkham was very handy at doing surveys and coming up with plans and designs for all these works he was about to undertake. At the same time, John Jacob Astor was buying up a lot of land in the area and expanding Ferncliff to the point where the estate was nearly 3,000 acres on the southern end from Rhinecliff Road. It extended up a little bit above Hook Road and 9G, and from the river it extended quite a little ways east of Route 9, over behind Williams Lumber over there. Towards the end of his life, John Jacob Astor helped finance the improvements to the new state road, which is now Route 9. He gave land and money to make the straightaway that now goes past Williams Lumber and that whole area up to 9G. He may have had an ulterior motive in that, because he wanted a big long straightaway to test his race cars on. Unfortunately, he didn't have a lot of time before he died to enjoy that, but his son Vincent Astor certainly did, and became infamous driving his Fiat race cars around the area at high speeds. One of the last improvements that John Jacob Astor was involved in before he died was what's now called should now be known as the Astor Memorial Bridge, as it was years ago, which is on Mill Street, just south of the village, by Crystal Lake there. He had Herbert Pinkham design a beautiful concrete bridge that had ornamental lighting on the top and a balustrade, walls on the side. And John Jacob Astor's last visit to his beloved Rhinebeck, which I forgot to mention at the beginning, that he was born here in 1864, I believe. So he was a native of Rhinebeck, and he loved it here, and he loved Ferncliff. His last visit to Rhinebeck was for the dedication ceremony of the bridge he was donating on Mill Street to the town. And all of the town trustees were there, and John Jacob Astor ceremoniously drove his car over the bridge with his second wife, Madeline, riding with him, and then gave a speech, and then they all went to the Rhinebeck Hotel, now the Beekman Arms, and celebrated with a dinner. Shortly after that, he departed on his honeymoon and never made it back. As most of you probably know, he went down with the Titanic on his return voyage. The Maples, which maybe some of you are familiar with, which is a house just down here, was part of the Ferncliff estate. And in 1900, John Jacob Astor was an automobile fanatic and got his first car in 1899. The year after, and he joined a new organization called the Automobile Club of America. He was one of the founding members, and he was in charge of improvements to the Post Road as part of a committee of the Automobile Club of America. And so in 1900, he had Herbert Pinkham draw up plans to renovate the Maples house and turn it into probably the first motor lodge in Rhinebeck. It was for his friends in the ACA to spend the night as they were traveling from New York to Albany. John Jacob Astor's son, Vincent Astor, inherited Ferncliff after John Jacob died in the Titanic disaster in 1912. The Astor Drive here remained open to the public throughout his lifetime. He died in 1959. And his third wife, Brooke Astor, then sold off Ferncliff estate. She had little interest in it herself. And she sold this land here to a real estate venture that had been formed by some local businessmen called Beekman. It was called Beekman Acres, and they bought up this portion of the Astor estate and resold the land. And they gave the private drive to the town and the village of Rhinebeck, and it was widened and turned into a public road at that time. The gates were still here, and they, around the mid-60s, when she sold the land, the gates ended up at the superintendent's house on River Road, where they were stored until, as Mike mentioned 24 hours ago, they have now been restored to their historic location. So, on behalf of the Verley family, which, many are here, my wife, Betsy, and my son, Graham, my father, sister-in-law, Jane, and Stuart, our hope in donating these gates is that they will serve as a visual reminder to everyone of this rich history that we have here. And from here, I will proceed to the formal presentation. On behalf of the Verley family, I'm proud to present these gates to the village of Rhinebeck, restored to their original historic location. Thank you all for coming today. I hope I didn't bore you too much.
I'd like to have the village mayor come forward. Mayor Gary Bassett.
Thank you, Mike. It's always an honor to be able to do something that commemorates the historic preservation of the village of Rhinebeck, and having the Astor gates that stood here for 125 years now physically here in our possession, and have them dedicated to the village of Rhinebeck is truly an honor. When this opportunity first was presented to me by our historian Mike Frazier and Matt, I was astounded. I couldn't believe that they had these gates and that we could actually do something to make it useful to commemorate the history of the village of Rhinebeck. So with that, I'd like to thank some people. I'd like to thank first Mike Frazier, our village historian, Matt Varelli and the Varelli family, and Kay, and so many others as you go around, and Nick, who all played a part in this collaborative venture to make these gates happen. They came to the board, and we did have some deliberations, but it was really, truly only due to safety and concern for how do we protect the gates that we were able to do it, but I was damn determined to make it happen. This is just so important to the village of Rhinebeck. Not only that, I'm also thankful that when the gates were removed so many years ago, iron must have been pretty cheap. And that we've been able to take advantage of the economy at the time, and these gates were not sold for, the scrap value that they could have had. So that also is a great thing. As Matt talked about some of the great things that the Astor family has done, this is just one of those examples. I'd also like to talk a little bit about the bridge over the Landsman Kill down at Crystal Lake. I don't know if many of you know, but that's due to be restored. The state has notified us that in 2023 they want to start restoring that bridge. Now, my heart beats because I get concerned when the state says they want to do something and they don't let us know what they plan on doing, but let it be known that we've already engaged with the Dutchess County Transportation Committee, who is engaging with the state, and I want to do my best to make sure that that bridge, when it is restored to its original shape and its original condition that it looked like when it was first installed in I forget what year, but I make you that pledge. So with that, there are some procedural things that I would like to do, all right? And I'm just going to do this because I'm so happy to accept the gates on behalf of the village of Rhinebeck. I'd like to have the Astor Gates Restoration Proclamation read out loud. Whereas the trademark Ferncliff stone walls and the pillars with large wrought iron gates were erected at the entrance to the drive on Montgomery Street in June of 1985, now known as the Astor Gates. Whereas a beautiful piece of the Rhinebeck Village history is now on display in the village that were part of the private entrance to Astor Drive. And whereas they were removed when Astor Drive became a village road in the mid-1960s. And whereas the gates have now been carefully preserved by the Varelli family and are in such wonderful condition, whereas the gates have been donated by the Varelli family so that everyone can enjoy them. And whereas we stand here open, inviting us to head down this wonderful drive and be reminded of the natural beauty and the landscape that attracted the Astors to Rhinebeck. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Gary Bassett, of the village of Rhinebeck, do hereby proclaim this day as a day of commemoration for the preservation of the Astor Gates, and given under my hand in these free United States in the village of Rhinebeck on this day, May 14, 2022, to which I have caused the seal of the village of Rhinebeck to be affixed and made this proclamation public. Thank you. Matt? Matt, I give this to you to keep for you and your family, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much for making this happen.
Thank you, Gary. I know that the village police department is eager to reopen Astor Drive. However, if we can be patient for just a few moments, I'd like to introduce our county historian, my counterpart, but at the county level, Will Tatum, to say a few words on behalf of his office. Will?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming out on this beautiful August and May day to join us for this historic dedication. I bring greetings from County Executive Marcus J. Molinaro and County Clerk Bradford H. Kendall, who together revived the Office of County History back in 2012 to support our vital and wonderful local history community, of which Rhinebeck is one of the strongest and most diverse. Today, of course, we've heard a number of wonderful stories and facts about how these gates fit into your local history and what they represent. But on my behalf at the county level, what I'd like you to take away from this is both the importance of place and the importance of people who live in that place, which includes all of you. These are not simply a monument to the great families, the Livingstons, the Beekmans, the Astors, the Barillis. These are a reflection of a community that takes its past, present, and its future seriously. So as you drive past these gates on your day-to-day goings and comings throughout the village and town of Rhinebeck, I hope you will think about how this reinvestment affirms the local community's dedication to the strength and health of the community. Thank you all very much.
And there's one other person who I need to thank for her involvement in preservation of local history here, seated near the police car, because Nancy Kelly is somebody who, when we initially met with Matt and Stuart about the possibility of these gates becoming reinstalled here, I frankly was a little skeptical, wondering how on earth are we ever going to be able to do this? And Nancy looked at me and looked at Nick and Matt, looked back at me and said, well, we have to do this. So we've done it. Thank you, Nancy. And thank you, everybody, for being here today. And since we've been able to use, courtesy of the Baptist Church, First Baptist Church here, their parking lot and their electricity, which we never talked to them about. But Pastor Dan, thank you so much. You know, if there's any organization in the community that has a history, the First Baptist Church recently celebrated the 150th anniversary. They, of course, were not located on Astor property initially. They were down where the a local restaurant, the Terrapin, is now taken over. But
200 years last year.
200 years last year, okay. I stand corrected. All right. Always glad to see somebody who knows more about local history than I do. Thank you, Pastor Dan.